Welcome to Tone Talks. Welcome to Tone Talks. Welcome to Tone Talks.
How's everybody doing today? This is Antonio Moore coming to you from Tone Talks. I wanted to have a brief discussion about the nonsense that Jay-Z just put out. You know, Jay-Z was interviewed and he basically insinuated that coming from a single parent household leads you to having more adverse reactions to the police. And I think all of that just shows this man don't know what he's talking about. So, you know, for me, I came from a single parent household and I don't have an adverse relationship with the police as a result. I think part of what we see is that Jay-Z is highly uneducated. Jay-Z really needed to go back to high school. And I think for a lot of us, that's hard to digest because the man has so much wealth. And I think that wealth for us as black folks has meant far too much in terms of respect. I don't see how somebody who's so dope and then didn't graduate from high school can build a moral compass of society that so directly seems racist. And I feel like Jay-Z really has to go back to the drawing board with the person he's trying to be, because he needs some guidance from the NFL partnership, which clearly seems like a money grab, to this and more recent incident, along with just a long history of Brooklyn Nets and selling out gentrification in Brooklyn and everything of the like. For me, Jay-Z represents the limitations of taking entertainers, albeit even hip-hop entertainers, and elevating them without any kind of understanding of what they actually know. Jay-Z insinuated that the interaction with the police that comes from an adverse reaction coming from a single parent household, it causes people to lose their lives, and none of that really addresses the core issue, which is race. It puts the insinuation that the core problem is a bad choice in not getting married, and we know all of this is just tropes not to deal with race. And to have this man repeat that is just such a problem. And I think we've seen this before with Jay-Z, where he actually elevated opportunity zones. More recently, we've seen articles that show that opportunity zones ain't nothing but a way for wealthy people to come grab all of the wealth out of the ghetto. It's a way to avoid actually doing reparations and reparative justice. It's a way to avoid a black agenda and what black folks actually need. I don't know if this man knows enough to talk to me no more. And I think you guys all should question that too. Because I think for what we seeing versus what we put in, we not getting enough return. You know, we put a lot into making Jay-Z elevate to the levels that he's at. And he need to really take some humble pills. I think he need to go get his GED. I say that out of trying to be respectful, in the sense that inside of that you get a lot of civics lessons and things of the sort that he seems to be missing. He just talks as though America is raceless at times. And you might not say that. You say, well, he's talking about single parent households and police brutality, but he's talking about it without the context of putting the ownership on white systemic oppression. Because he's trying to also keep those white systemic oppressors in an actual state of being okay with him, because he needs them for the NFL partnership, or for this partnership with Sprint, or the partnership with Bacardi for Ducey. We see in so many ways Jay-Z represents what happens when you elevate a grifter. What's a grifter? It's somebody who basically takes the struggles of other people, or the life of other people, and elevates it for their own advantage and gains. I look at this thing and I can't help but just start to understand that we got to start pushing back. Black America deserves better. I've said this before. I think for so many of us, that better comes in the form of a reparation push. I've said this before. I don't care if it's Jay-Z or Byron Allen. My preference is a black middle class over billionaires as a whole. But if we gonna have billionaires, I need those billionaires to be 100% black owned. Because when they black owned, they can scream out like we see Byron Allen doing with the Civil Rights Act of 1866 against the behemoth that is Comcast and the DOJ of Trump. Whereas we see Jay-Z trying to fold black failure back into black choice, and not dealing with the fact that that black choice came from a lack of black opportunity. In our paper, What We Get Wrong About Closing the Racial Wealth Gap, the 10th myth is basically looking at family disorganization as a reason for the racial wealth gap. That's an extension of the argument Jay-Z is making. Family disorganization does not define, does not explain, does not deal with the reason that there's a gaping difference between blacks and whites in terms of ownership, access, and opportunity.
Reading some of Myth 10 Black family disorganizations that cause the racial wealth gap so we can all get clear and not just be speculating as we saw Jay-Z did. There are substantial differences in living arrangements of children by race and ethnicity. Most white and Asian American children are still being raised by two married parents, as are 55% of Latino children. In sharp contrast, only 31% of black children are living with two married parents. Part of what we see is Jay-Z might say, I wasn't talking about a racial statement, but when you look at the data, it's a highly racialized trope to talk about single children and be talking about black mothers particularly. So he got to own that. Let me just say that. Continuing on in the paper, and you can again get this paper, what we get wrong about closing the racial wealth gap. I authored this with several economists last year. Single motherhood is a reflection of inequality, not a cause. White women still have considerably more wealth than black women, regardless whether or not they're raising children. In fact, single white women with kids have the same amount of wealth as a single black woman without kids. Recent research also reveals that the median single parent white family has more than twice the wealth of the median black or Latino family with two parents. These data show that economic benefits that are typically associated with marriage will not close the racial wealth gap. Having the ideal family type does not enable black households to substantially reduce the racial gulf in wealth. And the reason why that's important is that what Jay-Z is implying doesn't understand that it basically goes with wealth, which comes out of race. And so he's implying that because of being a single parent household, you have less access to opportunity and thus you're frustrated with the police, when actually just being black means that you're shut out of opportunity, locked into oftentimes failure, and as a result then you're frustrated with the police, whether you have one or two parents.
I think for a lot of us, we need to go read that Myth 10. It's available for free on the internet. And start to understand that we can't be racist to ourselves. We can't allow somebody like Jay-Z, who's 10, 20 years removed from the ghetto, to be going out onto stage painting himself as part of the ghetto and saying stuff that we don't say in the ghetto. This is what's going on. Black America gotta demand more and better. And I think for Jay-Z right now, you in scramble mode, bro. And so like in some ways what we see is just more of a digging of a hole, and we gotta come to a point to understand, well, maybe it's trying to take the sand and put it on top. Time to bury the hatchet. Let that old music go. Let all that 90s blueprint be in the past. Everybody gotta make a choice. But I'm saying to you, what Jay-Z said today on that interview is so problematic that it might be the end of him for me. And you make your choice for you. This is Tone Talks. I wanted to come to you, do a short brief video on Jay-Z and what I saw with Jay-Z, because what he said to me was both disrespectful to me, my single mama that's deceased, and everyone else out there trying to raise their kids in the right way on their own. Thank you so much. This is Tone Talks. Go to tonetalks.org to subscribe and donate. Share this video because we need to move forward with what we're going to decide we need to do with Jay-Z saying all the wrong things about what it is to be black in America. Please stay tuned. I'm going to play a short video that explains the racial wealth gap so we all get clear. I'm not here to play.
Tone Talks brings to you the difference between black wealth and white wealth explained in less than 2 minutes. In America, we think that we understand race, wealth, and how the two intertwine. We believe in a sharing of wealth among the races that largely does not exist. The truth is, by the data, there are really hardly any blacks that are millionaires in the United States, and whites largely own almost all of the personal wealth in the country. According to demos.org, white America owns 90% of the national wealth, with the top 50% of white families holding 88% of all of America's personal wealth in their bank accounts. Despite having billionaire Oprah Winfrey, of the 14 million black families, less than a few 100,000 of these households are worth more than $1 million, and that number is shrinking. While at the same time, over 8.5 million white families are worth more than $1 million. Adding to this, almost all of the 540 American billionaires are white as well. In fact, according to a report by Credit Suisse, to be in the top 5% of black families, you only need to be worth $356,000, including your house. All while just the top few hundred white American families are worth more than all of black America combined. Subscribe to learn more at tonetalks.org.